Stop building boxes that were never meant for you. Let me tell you something nobody warns you about when you're climbing ladders that were never built for your feet. Perfectionism isn't excellence with better lighting, it's fear wearing a blazer and sensible heels. I recently sat down with Ashley Preston, and this conversation didn't just shift something in me. It cracked open a truth I'd been avoiding for years. Ashley is out here doing revolutionary work, helping Black women professionals reclaim their voices, their power, their right to exist outside of boxes that were designed by people who never intended for us to fit. Through the Use Your Voice program and her relentless commitment to helping women rebuild after loss, after masking, after years of questioning their own instincts, Ashley is changing the narrative. She's not just coaching women, she's liberating them. And what she shared with me needs to be heard by every person in this room who's ever delayed their truth because being seen felt more dangerous than staying hidden. Here's what we don't talk about enough. We're not procrastinating because we lack discipline. We're delaying our truth because being visible, being vulnerable, being fully ourselves in spaces that weren't designed for us, that's terrifying. And perfectionism gives us permission to stay hidden just a little bit longer. It whispers, not yet, not until you're flawless, not until there's no room for criticism, not until you can guarantee success. But here's the thing. While you're waiting to be perfect, your purpose is gathering dust in a storage unit somewhere. Your promise is on indefinite hold. Your momentum is stuck in traffic with no GPS. And the world is missing out on what only you can bring, what only your specific combination of scars and strengths and stories can offer. Ashley Preston's work centers on helping high achieving Black women step into their voices without apology, without explanation, and definitely without waiting for someone else's permission slip. And in our conversation, three truths emerged that I believe have the power to change how you see yourself, your work, and your right to take up space. First truth, stop delaying your truth. Perfectionism and procrastination aren't personality quirks. They're fear in disguise, safer than being seen, but they block your purpose, your promise, and your momentum until you act. Second truth, create boxes designed for you, career molds, creative expectations, personality scripts not made for us. Build your own, rooted in resilience, rediscovery, and trusting your voice again. Third truth, action unlocks everything. Talking about your box is comfortable. Building it invites the magic, especially when you've survived loss and masking and the kind of pain that makes you question whether you even have a voice left to use. Now, let me tell you about some women who stopped waiting and started building. Kennethia Powell had looked around at the entrepreneurial landscape and saw Black and Brown women founders drowning, not because they lacked talent or vision or work ethic. They were drowning in isolation, lack of funding, pressure to go it alone in a system designed to make them fail, systemic barriers that made every single step feel like climbing Everest in heels while carrying someone else's baggage. And you know what Canithia did? She didn't wait for someone to build the support system she needed. She didn't delay until she had all the answers or perfect conditions or enough money in the bank. She built Black Girl Ventures. Kinithia created what she calls soft infrastructure, not the hard, cold, transactional systems we're used to. Soft infrastructure. Pitch competitions that center storytelling, not just spreadsheets. Peer circles that prioritize emotional safety, not just networking. Support networks that say rest is not optional, it's strategic. She funded and supported hundreds of Black women led businesses, and in doing so, she became a national model for what sustainable entrepreneurship looks like when you refuse to burn out for success. Here's what gets me about Kanithia's story. She recognized that Black women were being forced into hustle boxes that were killing them slowly. Boxes that said grind until you can't stand. Boxes that said mask your exhaustion and call it ambition. Boxes that said your value is measured by how much you can endure without breaking. And she said, not on my watch. She stopped delaying, stopped waiting for perfect conditions, stopped waiting for someone else to validate her vision. And she started building the infrastructure that would allow Black women to thrive without sacrificing their sanity, their health, their joy. That's what happens when you stop procrastinating your truth. You don't just change your life, you change the game for everyone coming behind you. You create pathways where there were only walls, you build bridges where there were only cliffs. Then there's Lakeisha Jacobs Myrick. Lakeisha walked through fire, and I don't mean that metaphorically. Toxic relationships that drained her spirit, financial ruin that made her question her worth, emotional abuse that left her questioning everything she thought she knew about herself, about love, about what she deserved, and perfectionism kept her trapped, kept her masking, kept her delaying the moment when she would have to show up as her full, messy, beautifully imperfect self. Because showing up imperfect felt like confirmation of every cruel thing she'd ever been told about herself. But Lakeisha did something radical. She embraced softness, not as weakness, not as giving up, but as power. She set boundaries that would have made her old self uncomfortable. She built a business that celebrates Black women's beauty, needs, and stories without apology. She used her podcast to have open, honest conversations about mental health, about survival, about what it really takes to rebuild when everything falls apart and you're standing in the rubble, wondering if you even have the strength to pick up one piece. And you know what happened? Her pain became her platform. Her vulnerability became her superpower. She became a mentor who normalized these boundaries and self respect, proving that post trauma softness doesn't make you fragile. It makes you unstoppable. It makes you wise. It makes you the kind of leader people trust because you're not pretending you have it all together. Lakeisha's story echoes something Ashley Preston shared with me. That moment when you stop procrastinating shame, when you stop waiting to be healed enough, or whole enough, or perfect enough. That's when you start building your box, the one designed for you, the one rooted in joy and healing and the audacity to believe you deserve both. And then there's Dr. Joy Bradnock, who looked at high achieving Black professionals and saw what nobody wanted to name: burnout, exhaustion from racial violence, pandemic pressures, the endless demand to be resilient when what we really needed was permission to fall apart and put ourselves back together on our own terms, in our own time, with our own definitions of what wholeness looks like. Dr. Joy championed trauma informed care, rest as resistance. She built frameworks that give Black leaders research backed tools for mental health without guilt. She shifted the narrative from survival to holistic power, from grinding to grounding, from strong to soft, from proving to being. What Dr. Joy understood and what Ashley Preston reinforces in her work is that perfectionism delays prioritizing emotional safety. We tell ourselves we'll rest when the project is done, when the promotion comes through, when we finally prove we belong. But that day never comes because perfectionism always moves the goalposts. There's always one more thing to fix, one more standard to meet, one more hoop to jump through. Dr. Joy's work validates what we're calling the soft girl era, the understanding that emotional honesty isn't weakness, it's leadership, it's strength redefined. It's the courage to build your own box when the world keeps trying to squeeze you into spaces that were never meant to hold you, let alone help you flourish. Now, let me be real with you for a second. These three women, Kenethia, Lakeisha, Dr. Joy, they didn't wait until they had it all figured out. They didn't delay until conditions were perfect. They didn't wait for permission or validation or a guarantee of success. They acted. Messy, imperfect, scared, but they acted. And that action unlocked everything. Because here's what nobody tells you about momentum: it doesn't come from perfection, it comes from movement. It comes from taking one step, then another, even when you're not sure where you're going. It comes from building your box one decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one moment of radical self trust at a time. Ashley Preston's work with the Use Your Voice program is all about this: helping women who've survived loss, who've spent years masking, who've questioned their instincts until they couldn't hear their own voice anymore, helping them trust themselves again, helping them act, helping them build. And I need you to hear this: your box, the one you're meant to build, it doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to follow the script. It doesn't have to make sense to people who've never walked your path, who've never carried your weight, who've never survived what you've survived. It just has to be yours, rooted in your resilience, shaped by your rediscovery, built on the foundation of trusting your voice again. So here's what I'm asking you to do: not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, today. I want you to pause the perfectionism scroll right now this week. I want you to name one box that's never fit, that job that drains you, that hustle script that's killing you, that expectation that was never yours to carry in the first place. Name it. Say it out loud if you have to. And then I want you to take one messy step toward building your own. Sketch it on a napkin. Delegate a piece of it to someone who can help. Voice it aloud to someone who gets it, who won't try to talk you out of it or shrink it down to something more palatable. Just one step, because momentum is waiting and your purpose doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. It needs you to be brave enough to be seen, flaws and all. Stop delaying your truth because the world convinced you that your imperfect voice isn't worth hearing. Create boxes designed for you, not for the version of you that makes other people comfortable. Let action unlock everything, because talking about change is safe, but building it is where the magic lives. Your soft girl era is waiting, not as an escape, not as weakness, but as the most courageous thing you'll ever do. The decision to be soft in a world that taught you survival, the decision to rest in a culture that worships exhaustion, the decision to build your own box when every system around you insists you should be grateful just to squeeze into theirs. This is your permission slip, not from me, from you. To stop waiting, to start building, to trust that your voice, your vision, your messy, imperfect, beautifully human truth is exactly what the world needs right now. So go build your box. And when you do, build it big enough that other women can see it and know that they can build theirs too.